Hello.
Hi there.
Welcome to another one of our horror reviews. I'm Randy.
And I'm Steve.
And this is MaXXXine Part 2.
XXX.
XXX, yes, XXX.
That was X.
X.
Not MaXXXine. This movie's actually probably the least horny. Actually, no. Probably Pearl is, but this movie is a little bit, but not that much.
Yeah.
And it's by far the most horny.
We talked about a little bit of the first act of Pearl, of MaXXXine.
We did.
In the first part. So we're kind of going to go into the second and third acts, where the whole point of this movie is the new killer is mocking the Night Stalker.
Yes, in Los Angeles back in the 1980s.
And they incorporated that with real life of what was going on during the time.
Well, this movie wanted to focus a lot on the actual time period 80s. In the beginning of this movie, too, just very briefly, this movie does cover the politics, Ronald Reagan being the President of the United States, and kind of like what the culture was like back then, especially in Hollywood, in the country. Just at the time, this movie being a little bit more political and a little bit more bigger than just one state, and kind of focusing on how this whole country works.
Yeah.
And how this movie is sort of referencing the actual time period. So So
the killer basically is mimicking the Night Stalker, and he or she is going after MaXXXine's friends.
Yes.
You find out, which there isn't really much point. Part of the movie.
You find out the point to the end,
except for the part where the cops finally visit her. And it's like she just figures out that her friends are getting killed.
Well, her reaction I did completely understand. There was one thing, okay. So her friends get killed off rather fast, I might add. Okay, so to set up real quickly, the first friend says, I'm going to go to this party in the hills. And then...
and it doesn't click with
and then Halsey's like, hey, I'm invited by this big person up in the hills to go this thing. And then Lily Collins says something how she
Lily Collins
says the same thing. Basically, something similar. They're not exactly identical. Something about being in the hills to do some sort of party or some sort of thing up in the hills.
Big producer
rich people, rich guys, and a big producer and whatever. Some sort of segue with the big hills. With the hills.
So that sets up the killer.
Yes.
We'll get to that in Act 3.
But the way she handles the fact that she's handling like being interrogating the cops, and like when they talk about her friends, she was so closed off about it, and she's like, I don't talk to police, which I guess I understand in one way, but I didn't understand why she didn't more. I thought that she would, especially since they were so important to her.
Yeah.
Which again references the fact that this movie does not have strong enough connections like the first two films did.
Yeah.
In the first two films, the relationships in those movies for Pearl and MaXXXine were so important and so deep. Whereas in this one, they kind of felt like they were there and she could have cared less sometimes.
Like, we should have
more... No offense, but like the relationship could have been more important.
We should have had more of her and her best friend.
Yeah.
In the video store, like the video store was cool.
Yeah, and I liked their relationship. It was kind of cute. They had a kind of cute, fun little bantery relationship as friends. It was cute. It was just not there enough. And I think they could have made you care about Moses anymore. Not saying I didn't care about him. Obviously, I did, because when he died, it was actually kind of sad. In fact, I think his is one of the most emotionally charged deaths in the entire movie, because it's actually one of the ones on screen that you actually see of a character you actually like.
Yeah.
A lot of the scenes in this movie, also a lot of deaths are off screen, and they're not
boring.
Well, before you say that, I will add there is a layer to these deaths that makes it feel realistic, because there's like their bodies look mangled, like they look like real bodies that are being found, which is kind of disturbing and actually effective. Considering their off-screen kills, like you see the pentagram mark on their cheeks and on their bodies, and they all look all like they're dug, like they are drowned or strangled, and it is disturbing. And also you see footage of them being like tortured by the killer, who you can't see her face, but you can see them torturing. It feels very realistic to see that stuff, and it's also kind of disturbing. Just not very focused on the slasher concept.
And that brings us to the
like I talked about that.
And that brings us to the cop side story.
Yes.
Like we said, there's so much shit going on in this movie.
It's topsy-turvy.
It's topsy-turvy. And the cops are just there.
And
Michelle
the characters
Monaghan
here
and
come
Bobby
relief
Cannavale
too.
are just there.
Because Bobby Cannavale sort of like, I wanted to be a star. He brings up he wanted to be an actor a lot, and it feels like it was just there for no reason. But, I mean, it wasn't bad. It just felt like there were a lot of things in this movie they wanted to do they didn't know how to make happen.
But yeah, that leads
like they show a thing of Pearl up in there's a Bates Motel. They bring in the Bates Motel and the Psycho house, and they don't even really use it that much. They show like the only real reference they make is they show Pearl. I think I heard this from someone else too, but they did show Pearl up in the Psycho house, and it's kind of creepy. But it wasn't really used so much. There's a couple times where you see old Pearl. Also when she's doing the SFX cast of her head, she also sees Pearl and has like a PTSD moment. But yes, the third act, you find out who the killer is. It's the big reveal.
The third act kind of
mic drop
for everyone, I think. Not everyone, but most people.
Either because
this is where the movie falls apart.
Yes, either because one, you predicted who it was and you're not surprised. Whereas if you're like me, it was who was a killer, and it was not predictable, and it was just random.
It was predictable.
I don't think so. I think it was split down the middle. Some people did predict it, and some people didn't. I'm not alone in this, because I thought it was random that they had the killer be this person. I didn't know this character would be back, and in the way they were presented.
So anyways, MaXXXine goes to this party. She said, fuck it. She's gonna go take care of this once and for all, figure out what's going on. She goes to this house.
It's like a Scooby-Doo thing almost.
Yeah, she goes to this house.
She traps the guy.
Which the cops follow her. And she thinks she traps him, but you find out, big reveal, it's her priest of a father.
Well, no. Kevin Bacon gets caught first at the party.
We don't have time for that.
You're making no sense then, because you're talking about how like she goes to the party and then Kevin Bacon.
We already talked about how Kevin Bacon was dead in the first part.
We didn't talk about how he died though. He dies. No, you didn't. You didn't talk about how he got crushed in a car.
How he got crushed in a car. Anyways, Kevin Bacon gets crushed in a car.
Yes.
By Giancarlo Esposito.
Now MaXXXine, she presses the button.
Well, yes, she presses the button.
You're not getting these facts straight, mister.
Whatever.
Okay. Anyhow, we go forward and then her father ends up being the big bad. Yes. Wow. Her father, the creepy sacrilegious dude who said his daughter got taken away to Satan because she wanted to be a porn star and an actress. And so he wants to be part of the satanic panic thing because he's like, my daughter's possessed because she wants to be a star, so we're gonna make this messed up video of her friends and her, and then kind of show how like, yeah, so there's this gun shootout and she gets like caught up, and then they all come down to a fight. The cops howered out, they're like, we got her, and then the one guy's dying and talking about how he wanted to be a star. And then leads to a
beautiful scene on the Hollywood Hills with the Hollywood sign.
Yes. And it does. And then she says, the whole line of, say it with me, Dad, I will not accept life I do not deserve. And then you're like, what? And then you see her go forward. She does an interview. She goes out to the China Theater, gets to like walk out of a limousine. That makes the poster. One of the posters is of her walking out of the car with like roses being thrown at her. So that's that scene at the very end of the movie. And you see her give some advice to children and young aspiring movie stars and things like that. And she's like talking about, I will not accept life I do not deserve. You have to work hard. It's whatever.
Yeah, it's
motivational. And then
weird ending.
It was a weird ending. I liked it. I think a lot of people didn't like the ending.
Satisfying ending.
I liked the ending. It wasn't what I wanted, but I liked it more than I think a lot of other people did, because I think a lot of people trashed it and said it was bad. It wasn't really matching the rest of the movies, but it wasn't horrible. It just didn't match tone really to the rest of the movies that much, but it was okay.
Yeah.
And then it ends with her, showing how she shot her father in the head. She goes and they play Betty Davis's eyes after First, you see her like say, "You're a effing movie star," goes out, and then she wants to say how she never wants to stop being a star.
All right, we'll talk about that in part 3.
Okay.